is a need for efficient cybersecurity to manage cyber threats for businesses. That's according to the Veeam Data Protection Trends Report of 2022. Now, for the second consecutive year, cyber attacks were the biggest cause of downtime for South African organizations. The report reveals that 86% of companies have suffered from ransomware in that period. Let's discuss this further. I'm joined now by Dr. Pierre Jacobs, who's Head of Cybersecurity Operations and Compliance at CyberAntix, a partner of Newzroom Afrika IT Group. A very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for your time. Can you give us an overview of the findings of the Veeam Data Protection Trends Report of 2022, particularly in relation to the prevalence of cyber attacks here in South Africa?
Good afternoon, folks, and thank you very much for having me. So, yes, you spot on. There have been quite a few hacks in the 2021-2022 year. 2022 had been particularly a bad year for us. I can immediately think of SASA that was hacked in October 2021. With that specific incident, the attackers got away with 89 million rand. And in 2022, we saw quite a few big incidents. We kicked off 2022 with the second incident in May, where the data of 3.6 million South Africans were leaked, followed by the Reserve Bank in August, and in September we had the consultants attack, where the details of more than 24 million South Africans were leaked, not to mention Absa, Transnet, and the Department of Justice. A week ago, I read that Postnet still struggles to recover from the attack that happened in 2021, where they've lost 77 million rand. The threat is real and the impact is really huge. Most of the companies or the examples that I've mentioned are from the financial sector as well as government entities. And in most cases, like you rightly said, they were targeted by ransomware. Ransomware typically starts with phishing attacks, or an attacker comes into your environment via poorly configured systems, like a poorly configured firewall or intrusion prevention systems. Some of the trends that we've noticed during 2022 and spilling over to this year is that we've noticed that the use of artificial intelligence to aid attackers are becoming more prevalent. As an example, attackers now use artificial intelligence to craft convincing-looking emails or to sidestep security controls when they perform phishing attacks or any of the other attacks. And then we've also seen a huge increase in ransomware incidents. In 2011, there was another report that was released by Sophos. It's called the State of Ransomware. And in this report stated that 24% of South African businesses fell victim to ransomware attacks, with an average of 6.8 million rand lost during these attacks. SABRIC reckons that South Africa loses up to 2.4 billion rand per annum due to cyber attacks. The impact is huge and it can be national. Think of Transnet, the Transnet incident where exports and imports could not happen. Also with the SASA incident, it's poor people's money who got stolen. So yes, the impact is huge.
The use of artificial intelligence, I mean, you make mention of that, but what are some of the other most common types of cyber attacks that South African organizations are facing?
Most common cyber attacks that we're noticing are ransomware type attacks. So ransomware is where attackers enter your systems and they then decrypt the information, demanding payment. This is really a terrible thing to happen to a company. What these attackers typically do is they exfiltrate all your information. That's the new way of doing this. Or performing these attacks, they actually exfiltrate your information prior to starting the encryption process. So in the case where you decide not to pay, they actually release your information, thus causing huge reputational damage to your organization. Ransomware is definitely something that we've seen. We've seen breaches due to poorly configured systems. Insider threat, that's where your own people are the cause of breaches or incidents. So there are a host of different types of attacks and incidents that we're currently seeing.
Yeah. The report also suggests that ransomware attacks have become increasingly prevalent in South Africa. I mean, you've made mention of that. What measures can companies take to protect themselves from these types of attacks?
If there's one piece of advice I can give businesses is to patch, make sure all your systems are patched. Make sure that your technical controls that you've deployed, that they're configured properly. Make sure that you've got a robust backup and recovery process and strategy in place, and test that regularly. Also, what I would suggest is once you've deployed your technical controls, make sure that you monitor them to make sure that they operate as intended, and also to allow for early detection and response to threats and attacks. So that's some of the things that can be done. Also, identify specific use cases that you would like to look for when you embark on a monitoring journey. Look for things like rapid encryptions across your estate, or look for the exfiltration of large volumes of data, which could be a precursor to a ransomware attack. So there's definitely help, and there are things that companies can do to protect themselves.
So in that instance, what do you believe to be some of the biggest challenges that companies in South Africa face when it comes to protecting themselves against cyber attacks? I mean, these measures that you make mention of, surely they should be more stringent.
Yes, absolutely. So there are standards. There are legal and regulatory requirements on companies in specific sectors. I think of the finance industry as an example. Even from a government perspective, there are some regulatory requirements in place. I think some of the biggest challenges that we do face is lack of skills, lack of support from management, and just having a good, proper, robust security management strategy and processes in place. This is something that needs to be addressed at board level, and the board needs to be actively involved in your cybersecurity efforts. It needs to be driven from there for it to be effective.
Very well. Thank you so much. Some sound advice there. I'm Dr. Pierre Jacobs, Head of Cybersecurity Operations and Compliance at CyberAntix, a partner of Newzroom Afrika IT Group. Thank you for your time.